Mail-order bride's heart shattered at 3 a.m. What she did next will haunt you forever. The clock struck 3, each chime echoing like a gunshot in the silence of the early morning. In a small, dimly lit apartment, Eva lay wide awake. She felt the icy grip of betrayal clutching her heart as she stared at the empty side of the bed. He was gone. Just gone. A mail-order bride, thrown into this life hoping for love, now trapped in a nightmare. With each tick of the clock, her mind raced images of the wedding day, the sweet promises exchanged, and the vibrant future projected onto that dreary white wall, but tonight, all that hope faded into darkness. She spent the first half of the night dialing his number, praying for the sound of his voice. Instead, desperate silence answered back. The whispers of betrayal echoed in her mind, feeding on her fear. How could he? Her heart thumped a warning, a frantic pulse that tightened her chest like a vice. And then, just as despair clouded her thoughts, she noticed it. A small envelope half hidden beneath the bed, its edges frayed and stained, as if it had been there for ages. The weirdest thing? It had no return address. Curiosity tugged at her like a child begging for candy. Eva peered around, her heart drumming like an old rock band. Should she open it? With trembling hands, she plucked the envelope and hesitated. What secrets lay within? A well-worn path of curiosity led her to the truth, but the fear was a wall she had to scale. What if it was the reason for his disappearance? She ripped it open, and out fell an old photograph, a picture of him, but not alone. A woman stood beside him, and her heart skipped a beat. Who was she? The woman was stunning, with wild hair flowing around her shoulders, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. A chill crawled down Eva's spine. This was not just any photo, it was from the wedding, his wedding. Just not to her. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. She could barely breathe, the truth pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. This was the first time she saw the woman. This was a revelation, a riddle wrapped in a nightmare. Who was this woman? Why was she smiling? The questions piled up, the chaos fueling a fire in her chest. The envelope slipped from her fingers, landing near the edge of the bed, spotlighting her frantic thoughts. Every shadow felt like a witness as she re-examined the photograph. What did he hide from her? Did he lead her to believe she was his soulmate while keeping fragments of another life tucked away in the corners of their home? The air thickened around her as panic turned to determination. She had to find him. She had to uncover the truth before it consumed her completely. As she reached for her phone to make sense of everything, a sound broke the silence, sharp and unexpected, a soft knock on the door. Her heart raced, each beat a scream in her ears. Who could it be at this hour? Was it him? Or was it the ghost of that woman in the picture? She took a steadying breath and steeled herself for whatever lay beyond that door. But in that moment, as the handle turned slowly, the question hung heavy: was she ready to confront the truth, no matter how deep the betrayal cut? The door creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. Eva's breath hitched in her throat as the outline of a man came into focus. Her heart raced, flipping like a wild bird in her chest. Was it him? The anticipation brought a surge of hope and dread all at once, but as the light spilled into the hallway, illuminating the stranger's features, her heart sank. It wasn't him. Instead, a tall man stood before her, with dark hair unkempt and eyes that darted nervously. "I'm looking for Derek," he said, his voice tense, barely breaking through the heavy quiet of the apartment. Derek? Her jaw clenched. He had a name. This man knew her husband. "What do you want with him?" she asked, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. Her fingers gripped the edge of the door as if to shield herself from whatever chaos could spill inside. "I need to talk to him." "It's urgent," he replied, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone else to appear. Eva's mind raced. What urgency? What had Derek gotten himself into? Without thinking, she stepped back, inviting him in. "Come in. I want answers." Once inside, the man took a seat on the edge of her worn-out couch. He looked every bit as anxious as she felt, and for a fleeting moment, she thought he might be a victim too. "I don't have much time. Derek and we made a deal. A deal that went wrong." Her stomach twisted. "What kind of deal? What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to find the right words. "It's about the woman in that picture. Her name is Vanessa. Derek didn't tell you, did he? She's tied to something dangerous." Eva's heart sank again. "What's dangerous? What do you know about her?" "She's missing," he said, urgency lacing his voice. "People are looking for her. They think Derek is involved. They think he took her." The words hung in the air like a foul stench. Eva felt sick. "You mean, he kidnapped her?" No. Not like that. But their wedding, it was never supposed to end like this. There was a promise that needed to be kept. I tried to warn him." His eyes were wild, darting around the room. "I thought he had left it all behind." She was trembling now, the world around her collapsing into a tunnel of panic and betrayal. A deal gone wrong? Vanessa, the beautiful woman from the photograph, missing? Why had Derek hidden this from her? What did he promise her? She whispered, her voice trembling. A soft thud resonated from behind the door, and they both jumped. The man's eyes widened. They might be here for him. "You need to leave." Before she could process his words, a second, louder knock rattled the door. "Derek," a voice shouted from outside. "Open up. We know you're in there." Panic coursed through Eva's veins. This was no longer just about love or betrayal, it was a matter of life and death. Her mind raced. Should she hide? Confront them? The weight of the truth enveloped her. She needed to know where Derek had gone, and more importantly, what was happening to Vanessa, but at that moment, as the pounding grew louder, another horrifying thought struck her. Was Derek truly the victim, or was she about to discover he was much darker than she ever imagined? With one last glance at the stranger, she knew one thing for sure: her life had just become a whirlwind of danger and deception. So, what would she risk next in the search for the truth? The door splintered under another heavy blow. Eva held her breath, each beat of her heart sounding like a war drum in her ears. The stranger's eyes flared with fear, and she felt that panic infecting her soul. What did they want with Derek? Would they drag her into whatever mess had engulfed him? Just then, the stranger shot to his feet. "We can't stay here," he hissed, his hands trembling. Eva shook her head, a spark of defiance igniting within her. "Wait. I need to at least understand what this is about. Who are they?" "There's no time for that." He moved to the window, peeking through the blinds. "I can't let you get hurt." From outside, familiar shouts echoed through the dim light, voices taut with simmering aggression. "Derek! You better open the door or we're coming in." With each shout, Eva's resolve wavered, the truth increasingly elusive. Vanessa was missing, Derek was apparently entwined in something insidious, and now, danger was knocking at her door. What kind of man had she married? "Give me a second," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "He needs to answer for this. If he's in trouble, I can stop." The stranger spun to face her, desperation darkening his eyes. "If you care about him, you'll get as far away as you can, right now. I wish I'd never gotten involved, and now I've brought you into this." But a primal instinct held her in place. Questions buzzed in her mind, forming a choking grip around her throat. What about Vanessa? Is she really in danger? The man's expression faltered, the flash of guilt crossing his face unmistakable. She's not just missing. There are people involved who have no regard for life. If Derek messed things up, they'll come for anyone tied to him, especially you. A primal scream clawed at the back of her throat. She hated Derek for putting her in this position, yet a part of her needed to know. What does he have to do with her? What could he have promised her? The man was pacing by now, exuding a nervous energy that only added to her tension. That's the part that makes it dangerous. He was supposed to protect her from them. This was supposed to be the end. But Derek got greedy and thought he could change everything. Right then, the door rattled once more, and something within Eva snapped. It was no longer about waiting or hiding, it was about claiming the truth, whatever that may be, making a decision in a heartbeat. She grabbed the stranger's arm. We're going to find him. We go out there together. You owe me that much. But he recoiled, his face pale. You don't understand. You're risking your life. Maybe I am, she fired back. But I refuse to be a prisoner to my own fears. Just as she stepped toward the door, there was an ominous crack followed by the sound of wood splintering. They both turned sharply. The intruders were breaking through. Eva, please. The stranger begged, stepping forward. We have to run. But as she glanced at the door, the shards of her reality began to splinter. The moment she opened that door, she might lose everything including herself. Each heartbeat echoed like a countdown. With every second, she felt the pressure building, fear grappling with courage. Ready or not, here they come, she muttered, her voice steady now. But what she didn't know was that the true danger lurked just beyond the door. A revelation could change everything, and this might just be the moment that sealed her fate. What choice would she make, and could she still escape the shadows that threatened to engulf her? A splintering crash echoed through the small apartment, and Eva felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Instinctively, she stepped back, her heart racing as the door creaked under the force of heavy boots slamming against it. Eva! The stranger shouted, panic brightening his eyes. Now, we really have to move. But her feet seemed glued to the floor, caught between the urge to bolt and the need for answers. The stakes became clearer with every heartbeat. She could run, hide, escape, but what about Derek? What about Vanessa? Just as doubt flickered in her mind, the door burst open, flying off its hinges. 3 figures stormed into the room, their menacing postures silhouetted by the dim hallway light. Eva's breath caught in her throat. They were all hard edges, rough leather jackets, tense muscles, faces obscured by shadows yet radiating malice. Where is he? A gruff voice demanded, advancing toward her. The stranger pulled her back, seeking safety behind him. You don't want this, he warned, his face pale as marble. Walk away. You don't need to involve yourself. But Eva refused to cower further. The sight of danger ignited something deep within her: anger, fear, something more primal. Tell me what the hell is going on. She shouted, surprising even herself with the intensity of her voice. The intruder's gaze flickered toward her, surprised. You really don't know, do you? About Derek? The deals he made, the people he betrayed? Shut up! Shouted another man, a flash of impatience breaking through. She's in the way. Find him. The urgency in their voices ignited a wildfire of panic within Eva. She had to know what Derek had done. Tell me. She demanded, stepping forward despite the stranger's grip attempting to hold her back. Her pulse raced. If he's in danger, if Vanessa is in danger, what did he promise you? The first man took a step closer, meeting her gaze with an unsettling intensity. You want to know? He asked, a smirk curling his lips. Derek promised us safety, but all we got was betrayal. Betrayal. Eva breathed. What does that mean? He was supposed to protect Vanessa. Why would he turn on her? Because she was never safe with him, he replied, his voice cold, twisting like a knife in her heart. He thought he could play both sides, but these people don't forgive. He left us no choice. We do what needs to be done. The stranger beside her turned sharply, his voice urgent. We need to get out of here. Now. But another loud crash from the hallway echoed, and suddenly the tension snapped like a taut string. The third figure lunged past the first two, eyes fixed on Eva. Grab her! He shouted, arms outstretched. Run! The stranger shouted again, his hold on her tightening. In an instant, chaos erupted. Eva wrested free, sprinting toward the kitchen as the room descended into a whirlpool of shouting and chaos. She could hear the stranger pleading, could feel the heat of the intruder's pursuit. Just then, she spotted a glimmer of hope in the chaos. The back door. It led to the alleyway, a way out. But would she have time? Dread coiled in her stomach as she raced toward the back door, heart pounding like a war drum. She had only one chance to escape this nightmare and search for Derek and Vanessa, but would she make it out alive, or was she running toward an even greater danger? The moment she reached for the handle, a cold hand grasped her shoulder, yanking her back. Had she just sealed her fate? Run! She screamed, knowing the fight was only just beginning. The grip on Eva's shoulder tightened, a vice that held her in place, fear flooding her veins. She twisted, wrenching herself free, but the shadowy figure lunged again, his breath hot and rasping. He was close. Too close. Get off me! She screamed, adrenaline coursing through her, fueling her fight-or-flight instinct. She darted towards the door, but the second intruder cut her off, blocking her path with a nasty grin. You really think you can just run away? He taunted, stepping closer, shadows cloaking his features but not his malice. No! She shouted, and without thinking, her fist flew, landing a surprising punch to his stomach. He staggered back, and for a split second, she had a sliver of space. The moment was fleeting. Just as she bolted for the door again, the third figure caught her wrist, pulling her with a hard yank. Pain shot through her arm, and she fought through it, swinging her other fist. This time it connected with his jaw, knocking his hat askew. A flash of surprise crossed his features before he recovered, resorting to brute force as he shoved her back. She stumbled, but her eyes stayed locked on the door, her last hope. Hold her! The first man roared, his voice a whip cutting through the air. Panic bubbled in Eva's chest. She had to get outside. Had to find Derek and Vanessa. How could she keep them safe if she didn't escape? She lunged toward the back door again. The stranger, her only ally, found his voice once more. Eva, go! He yelled, his body darting toward the intruders, trying to create a barrier between them. She spotted the back door ajar, the glimmer of moonlight beckoning her like a siren. She sprinted toward it, determined to burst free, but someone tripped her. She went down hard, the floor scraping against her knees. Hot tears of frustration and fear blurred her vision. Forget the girl. One of them shouted, frustration evident. Find Derek. The weight of their pursuit crashed over her like a tidal wave, yet in that chaos, a thought sparked. If they were looking for Derek, maybe that was her chance. She scrambled to her feet, breath hitching, heart thrumming like a drum. Eva! The stranger called, panic lacing his tone, but his warning melted into the adrenaline surging through her as she rounded into the kitchen. Where? Where could she? Desperately searching, her gaze slipped past the shards of broken plates, and then she spotted a small window. It was narrow but might lead to salvation. Switching gears, she dashed toward it. The noise in the apartment erupted behind her. Find her! Someone yelled. She could practically feel their breath at her back as she clambered up onto the counter, and with a leap, she shoved her shoulders against the window, glass rattling as she squeezed through. Air rushed past her as she landed outside. The cool night enveloped her, stark against the chaos inside. Heart racing, she took off down the alleyway, every shadow a threat, every noise triggering a flinch. She couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. Derek and Vanessa needed her. As she ran, her mind whirled with questions. What had Derek done? Who were they? And how could she protect those she loved if she was just a step behind the danger? Glancing over her shoulder, she saw the door burst open. They were coming. She couldn't afford to look back. She ran faster, fear propelling her forward, the dark alley offering no comfort. Emerging onto the street, Eva searched frantically for a place to hide, but just as she ducked behind a dumpster, a figure stepped out from the shadows ahead, blocking her escape. Going somewhere? He asked, slowing his approach. Eva's heart sank. She was trapped, the moment had come. She had to decide: fight, hide, or somehow trust this stranger. As she weighed her options, confusion collided with dread. What new horror awaited her in this empty street at this hour? The encounter had only just begun. The figure stepped closer, illuminated by the faint streetlight. Eva's heart hammered in her chest. He had a scruffy beard, eyes that shimmered with a mix of curiosity and something darker. She held her breath, the air thick with uncertainty. "Let me guess. You're not with them," he said, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting other figures to appear from the shadows. "Who are you?" She stammered, backing further against the dumpster, feeling the cold metal dig into her spine. The chill seeped through her thin shirt and clawed at her resolve. "Just a guy trying to stay out of trouble," he replied, his voice low and steady. "But it looks like trouble has found you." The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, growing louder. The thumping in her chest quickened again. Her predators were closing in. "Is there a way out of here?" she whispered, desperate. He nodded, swift and decisive. "Follow me." Without another word, he turned on his heel, already blending back into the flickering shadows. "Wait!" she called after him, torn between fleeing and trusting this stranger. But she had no time. Swiftly, she followed, heart pounding as they navigated through the dimly lit streets. He led her through narrow alleys, dodging trash cans and rusting fences, until they reached a quiet street where the streetlights flickered like dying stars. Yet, a chill danced through the air, prickling her skin. "Stop," he said suddenly, holding up a hand. "We need to stay quiet." Eva nodded, straining to hear anything beyond the restless breeze. The footsteps had faded but not vanished. She felt exposed here, under the open sky. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked, peering at her with an intensity that made her throat tighten. "I need to find my friends. Derek and Vanessa. They might be in trouble," she shot back, her words tinged with urgency. "I can help you," he responded, almost too casually, as if helping someone escape from danger was just a regular Tuesday for him. "Why would you?" He paused, casting a glance over his shoulder. "Let's just say, I have my reasons." Before Eva could ask anything else, he seized her wrist and pulled her through a wrought iron gate leading to an abandoned building. They ducked inside just as shouts filled the air behind them. Cold sweat dripped down her forehead. They crouched low behind a pile of debris, listening to the heavy footsteps approach closer, shadows creeping as they searched for her. "If they find us," she began, but he silenced her with a finger to his lips. The intruders passed by, their voices laced with frustration. "She couldn't have gone far," one growled. Eva's breath hitched, but the stranger remained calm. He threw a quick glance at her, his eyes narrowing as if he were weighing his next move. "Here's the deal. I can help you get to your friends, but you need to trust me. No secrets." Had she really come this far, from fighting in her apartment to hiding with a complete stranger? "Why would I?" she shot back. "For all I know, you could be one of them. He sighed, eyes softening momentarily. You don't have a choice. I'm not your enemy. I promise, just let me prove it. Her gut twisted. Everything about her screamed to flee, trust no one, protect herself. Yet, she was lost in this chaos. The sound of approaching voices dragged her back to reality. What's your name? She asked quietly, needing something to anchor her in this storm of uncertainty. Call me Alex, he whispered just as the gang turned around. She swallowed hard. The choices before her spun like a whirlwind. With adrenaline pumping, she knew they had to act now. Okay, Alex, she breathed. What's the plan? And as he opened his mouth to respond, a startling sound echoed through the building, a gunshot. The escape was no longer a question, it was a battle for survival. Eva flinched, the sound pealing through the old building like thunder. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to get as far away as possible, but Alex's grip tightened around her wrist. No! He hissed, eyes darting around the darkened room. Stay down. Heart racing, she crouched lower behind the debris, her pulse pounding in her ears. She could barely hear anything else over her own breath, coming out in frantic bursts. Outside, the shouting escalated, voices blending into a chaotic symphony. We heard the shot. Find her. What if she's inside? The intruders were getting closer again. Each footstep sent waves of fear crashing over her. What do we do? She whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Wait, he said, his voice steady. Just give me a second. Her heart sank. They didn't have a second. She could feel time slipping through her fingers like sand. Then a door creaked open at the far end of the building. Eva held her breath. She peered through the gaps in the debris, catching a glimpse of a shadow passing by. A figure, clutching a flashlight, was searching, scanning every corner. I'm not leaving you, Alex whispered fiercely, his gaze locked onto hers. Don't play the hero. She shot back, fear bubbling in her chest. We need to get out now. But he shook his head, a determination flickering in his eyes. If we move now, they'll see us. We wait, then strike when they aren't looking. Strike? She echoed, anger and panic swirling inside her. What are you talking about? Before he could respond, another shot rang out, ricocheting through the building. This one was closer. Damn it! A voice cursed from outside. I think they're in there. Go! Alex suddenly urged, pulling her further into the shadows. She hated how her instincts fought against her, how every fiber of her being wanted to trust him but felt trapped in this dangerous dance of uncertainty. Just then, a small window caught her eye. It was stuck, barely half open. A glimmer of moonlight seeped through, and for a moment, it looked like the only escape route. What if we try that? She pointed frantically. Too risky, he murmured, glancing back at the door with a tense expression. But the sound of footsteps grew louder, drawing nearer. You have to trust me, he urged, his grip tightening around hers. Stay quiet. Glimmers of panic began to cut through her resolve. Eva's heart raced against the impending chaos as the door creaked again. She could see another shadow slip in, this one larger and looming, the flashlight beam cutting across the debris, searching, a wave of fear washed over her. Was she really going to die in this abandoned building, alone but for a stranger she barely knew? Please, she whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. You said you could help. In just a moment, he hissed, his eyes narrowing. The intruder stepped further in, and he suddenly turned to Eva, a sudden spark igniting in his gaze. Listen to me. There's a secret exit through the back. I'll distract them, you head for that window. Don't look back. Distract them? She repeated, dread settling in her stomach. What if they just go when I say? Now. Before she could process his command, Alex surged forward, bursting into the light. "Hey! Over here!" he shouted, drawing all attention to himself. She couldn't breathe. Everything around her turned to fog as confusion clouded her mind. "Now, Eva!" he yelled, urgency in his voice shaking her back to reality. With renewed determination, she ran for the window as the chaos erupted behind her. She shoved her body against the jagged opening, muscles straining, when suddenly she heard something that froze her in place, a sharp scream, echoing across the empty building. It belonged to Alex. "What have you done?" she whispered, breathless with horror. And in that very moment, Eva was faced with an agonizing decision: look back or keep pushing forward. The battle against her instincts waged in her mind as the sounds of struggle erupted behind her. Would her escape mean abandoning the only ally she had left? The screams rang in her ears, drowning out every rational thought. Each cry felt like a dagger aimed straight at her heart. Could she really leave him behind? The window loomed, half open, like a beckoning hand wringing her soul. Panic surged through her as she fought against the urge to run back. She held her breath, her lungs tight as she pressed against the cold, jagged edges of the window frame. "Don't look back," she whispered to herself, but her mind wouldn't listen. Every instinct told her to leap through, to make a break for freedom. Yet another part of her, the part that had learned to trust Alex despite the uncertainty, screamed not to abandon him. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed movement. The last of the shadows shifted, and a murmur of voices engulfed her like a fog. "Keep looking. Check every room." They were coming. They would find her, and it would be over. Just a few feet away from the window, she could almost taste the escape. With trembling hands, she reached for the edge, but the urge to turn back surged stronger. Against the shadows, she saw Alex struggling, fighting with everything he had. "Eva! Go!" he shouted again. His voice jolted her out of her trance. And in that moment, she remembered what he was fighting for. It wasn't just himself, it was for her too. She clenched her jaw, her heart racing wildly as she turned and squeezed through the window. The jagged glass scraped her arms, tearing at her clothes, but pain was drowned out by urgency. The night air hit her face, cool and invigorating. As she dropped to the ground, she quickly scanned her surroundings. It was dark, but she could see the outlines of buildings ahead. Step by step, she crept into the shadows, her breath hitching every time a twig snapped beneath her feet. But there was no escape. A wave of dread washed over her, and her heart sank as she realized what she'd left behind. The fear of what might be happening to Alex consumed her thoughts. "Why didn't you come? You should be followed." She thought angrily, each thought like a jolt through her soul. But then, a chilling thought interrupted her self-reproach. What if he didn't make it out? A panic surged within her, drawing her back to the building, but she couldn't risk the danger. Heart pounding, she slipped deeper into the darkness, pressing herself flat against the cool wall of a nearby building. She had to think. Then, something caught her attention, a low rustling accompanied by hurried footsteps. There were more of them, and they were moving fast, hunting for her. Instinct screamed to run, but she knew she needed to gather herself. She had to get to safety first, plan her next move, but she couldn't shake the echo of Alex's scream from her mind. Suddenly she turned, peering back at the grim outline of the old building. In the chaos, she had dropped everything she owned, her phone, her purse, her connection to the outside world. All she had left was the nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, she could help him. But could she risk everything for a guy she barely knew? He could be just a ghost in the wind, yet his face flashed in her mind. The decision clawed at her heart. Just as she pushed herself to stand and run, a beam of light pierced the darkness. Panic flooded her as she felt the rush of cold wind. The intruders were already fanning out. Go back," she whispered to herself. But where was the line drawn between survival and loyalty? She stood frozen, the weight of her decision crippling. Then, just before she turned to run, she heard a faint crack of glass shattering. Reality twisted around her as her gut tightened. Was it Alex? Did they find him too? The darkness threatened to swallow her as she faced the approaching sound of footsteps. Eva, a voice called, low and warped. It wasn't Alex, but the tone sent chills down her spine. And in that moment, she had to decide, face the shadows converging toward her or turn back to the haunted past for a chance at saving the only ally she had ever known. As she prepared to jump into the unknown, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if the darkness wasn't what she feared most? What if she wasn't alone in this nightmare after all? The footsteps grew louder, an ominous drumbeat jerked to life in her chest. Eva ducked further into the shadows, heart racing like a trapped bird. She could barely make out the figures moving through the empty street, their flashlights slicing through the darkness like knives. Search the area. She can't have gone far. The barked order sent another jolt of fear through her. She was outnumbered, exposed, and alone. With a surge of adrenaline, she edged along the wall, her eyes darting for any hint of an escape route. The night felt alive with danger, crawling with unseen threats lurking behind the veil of darkness. But all she could see were those flashing lights, seeking her out like a predator honing in on prey. Then, a shattering sound echoed in the silence. It was a noise that sent chills up her spine, the fractured glass of a nearby window being broken, and she couldn't shake the thought that it signified their hunt for Alex. Eva! The warped voice called out again, this time closer. The urgency in that voice twisted her stomach. It wasn't just Alex they were after anymore, they were hunting her too. Think. She urged herself, the panic forcing her to breathe faster. There was a corner ahead, a chance to evade detection. But just as she began to move, gravity pulled at her, and the world shifted. Her foot slipped on a loose piece of gravel, and she fell against the wall with a dull thud. Over here! Someone shouted, catching her breath. She scrambled to her feet, wincing at every sound she made. In the chaos, she noticed the outline of a nearby alley just a few yards away, small, narrow, and her only hope at escaping. Clenching her hands into fists, she darted toward it, desperate, every second counting against her. She slipped into the alley, the shadows swallowing her whole. For a moment, she was cloaked in darkness, but the growing weight of dread nestled in her gut urged her to move. With silent urgency, she pressed her back against the cold stone wall, holding her breath as footsteps thundered past the entrance. Did you see her? One thug growled. Must have gone that way, another replied, and the urgency in their voices chased her nerves even higher. What if they were right? What if she was trapped? Shaking her head to clear her thoughts, she kept her ears open, straining for the sound of her own heartbeat over the tension in the air. Then, she remembered his scream. An undeniable instinct tugged at her. She had left him, but now, maybe she could play the game. They were clearly looking for her, and she had to use that to her advantage. Peering around the edge of the alley, she saw the street empty, only a few dim outlines of figures still wandering around, cursing under their breaths. With her will hardening, Eva made her decision. She couldn't leave Alex behind after all, she was going back in. Sticking to the shadows, she felt the pull of adrenaline surge within her as she began making her way back toward the building, toward the danger, toward whatever awaited her inside. Step by hesitant step, she navigated through the narrowest alleyways, her mind a maelstrom of thoughts. Had they found him? Was he still alive? Was she walking into a trap? Just as she thought the path was clear, she heard a loud crash echo through the night, and her heart stopped. It came from the old building, the sound of desperation, of a struggle. "Stay strong, Alex," she murmured, the words soft yet full of determination. With every ounce of courage, she stepped forward, ready to confront whatever shadows lurked in that building. But what she didn't expect was the glint of a knife in the darkness, a predatory shine that promised danger lurking just ahead. And as she stepped into the mouth of the lion, she couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps this time, it wasn't just her life at stake. What if this time, it was her very soul? The air inside the abandoned building was thick with tension. Eva's heart raced as she crept cautiously toward the source of the noise. Footsteps echoed, muffled shouts mingling with silence that stretched like a taut string. She held her breath. Every noise felt magnified, every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind was amplified, drawing her closer to the beating heart of the chaos. "Alex!" she called suddenly, a whisper slipping from her lips before she could think better of it. The only reply was the soft scuffling of feet in the shadows. She pushed forward, feeling determined. She couldn't abandon him. The stakes were far too high. With her heart pounding loudly in her ears, she maneuvered through the debris, every instinct on high alert. Another crash startled her, and then she saw them, three figures contending in the dim light, and at the center was Alex, grappling with one of the thugs. The scene was raw, chaotic, a whirlwind of fury and desperation. The other two men shouted, impatience building as they watched Alex struggle. "Get away from him!" Eva roared, stepping into the light, heart racing. The eyes of the intruders turned to her, surprised anger etching their features immediately. "Look who decided to join the party," one of them grinned cruelly, muscles coiling in anticipation. The others chuckled darkly, a morbid acceptance of her role in this nightmare. With furious determination, Eva dove forward, grabbing a piece of broken glass from the floor and wielding it like a weapon. "Get your hands off him!" she shouted, guilt and adrenaline surging together. It was her last shot at saving Alex, but they just laughed. "You're out of your depth, sweetheart," the same one sneered. Before she could register his words, the man Alex fought against twisted, throwing him into the wall with a sickening thud. "Alex!" she screamed, a bone-deep dread clenching her stomach. Fear ignited something primal within her. She lunged toward the men, gripping the glass tighter, ready to defend her only ally. But they were quicker. One of them pushed forward, advancing toward her with eyes aflame. As he lunged toward her, she swung, catching him off guard and slicing across his cheek. The blood dripped down his face, his surprised howl echoing around the room. The moment felt suspended, time hanging heavy between them. The distraction worked. Alex took advantage of the chaos, shoving his attacker aside. "Run, Eva!" "Now," he commanded, struggling to regain his footing. Before she could think, before the fear could swallow her, she rushed toward him. Their eyes connected for just a moment, and she saw a flicker of hope. But the other two were recovering fast. She could hear their grunts, their footsteps thundering toward them. "No! We have to go together," she insisted, grasping for his arm, but it was too late. Another figure lunged at Alex, and Eva felt a small piece of her heart crack. "Get out of here! Find Vanessa!" he yelled, a fierce urgency in his voice. Though every instinct screamed at her to stay, she turned and ran, the urgency propelling her forward like a fierce gust of wind. As she sprinted through the hallways, dodging shadows and debris, she frantically searched for any sign of Vanessa. Would she be alive? What had Derek done? Confusion surged alongside fear. Could he really be the monster they said he was? She stumbled into a narrow hallway and froze, listening to the sounds of chaos behind her. The commotion was loud, filling the space with the overwhelming sense of urgency. She had to press on, there was no turning back now. Then she saw at the open door at the far end of the hall, moonlight spilling through like a beacon. She bolted toward it, hope igniting inside her. Reaching the door, she gasped for air. The cool night air kissed her skin as she slipped outside. The alley was empty, and the world moved eerily quiet. She felt the night pulse beneath her feet, fear and courage intertwining as she willed herself to take one step forward, then another, but her body trembled with the weight of all that had happened. She had to find Vanessa, but how? The urgency felt unyielding, the silence around her deafening. "Where are you?" she murmured into the void, searching the shadows, every corner of her mind screaming for a response. The darkness threatened to consume her entirely. then she heard a soft whimpering sound. Her heart surged. Running toward it, she spotted Vanessa crouched against the far wall, head buried in her knees. Relief and terror washed over Eva as she dropped to her side. "Vanessa! It's me, Eva. We're going to get you out of here." Suddenly, a figure emerged in the alleyway behind her, shadows pooling around him like a cloak of menace. It was Derek. He looked wild, desperation painted across his features. "Eva! What are you doing here?" "Derek!" She gasped, torn between joy and trepidation. "We need to get her out." But his gaze flicked from her to Vanessa, confusion twisting into something darker. "You shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous." A blow of anger surged inside her. "You're the one who put us all in danger. What have you done? Just trust me." He nearly shouted, but she felt the doubt creeping in. Could she? The very reality of everything was crashing down. She had no way of knowing who to trust, the man she'd married or the brave stranger who had fought for her. But suddenly, Alex materialized, bruised but determined, stepping protectively beside her. "We're not leaving without Vanessa," he stated resolutely, every ounce of truth shining in his eyes, and in that moment, clarity cut through the terror. Together, they formed a pact, a trio against the monsters that threatened to rip them apart. "No more running, no more hiding. Let us go now," Eva directed, taking Vanessa's hand, pulling her up. Fueled by a reckoning of unyielding courage, the four of them stepped forward into the unknown, a small team united against the chaos that had engulfed their lives, but what awaited them beyond those shadows felt like an unwritten future, a blank slate where every choice mattered, where every heartbeat held the potential to shift their fates, and as they plunged back into the night, the air electric with fear and hope, one thing was certain: they would fight for their lives. Together, they could face whatever terrifying truth lay ahead, but as the darkness yawned before them, questions remained. What had Derek truly promised? And would the bonds forged in fear be enough to withstand the challenges that awaited? Life had shattered, but together, they hoped to rebuild. This was just the beginning. And with that thought, they stepped into the dark, each heartbeat a promise that they would not be defeated. Now, don't you dare miss out on what's next. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive story. Smash that like button now to help fuel the algorithm that sends our tales to more ears. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And I'm serious, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. You need to help us grow this amazing community. Don't wait even one more second.